generation, but for the generations that will come after us. And that's what Project C has been focusing on in the last few months, is this using this moment of, I would say, proverbial calm to plan on how we are going to manage the storm when the storm does come, because the storm will come.
Absolutely.
How ready we shall be for it will depend on what we do now. It will depend on what Cameroonians do now, as opposed to wait for the storm to come before we think of what to do. Welcome, Leopold. Thank you for joining us. Please join me in welcoming our guests.
Ouais, merci infiniment à notre bien aimable audience. Merci. C'est un autre samedi aujourd'hui et les choses avancent dans le sens que nous espérions. Et vraiment, tu l'as si bien dit, nous travaillons pour le Cameroun de demain, les générations futures. Et de toutes les manières, tu l'as aussi bien dit, le changement arrivera fatalement. Je ne sais pas s'il faut le dire ainsi, mais il arrivera absolument, absolument, et nous devons être prêts. Voilà, c'est ce que nous essayons de faire. Et puis, nous ne remercierons jamais assez les compatriotes qui remplissent massivement le sondage, le questionnaire. Et nous allons encore en parler aujourd'hui. Et merci beaucoup au Dr. Chris, notre invité du jour. Et il sera vraiment dans son élément. Il faut dire comme d'habitude. Merci.
Welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Leopold. Let me just use this opportunity to talk a little bit about our program today.
Yeah.
Today we are blessed, we're honored to have as our guest speaker, Dr. Chris Fomenu, which Leopold just introduced. Before we get to our guest speaker, of course, we're going to have our Cameroon in the Week rubric that Eric will come in and talk about. Then we will have an update on the surveys that are going on, the Once and For All survey. We have seen we've crossed one of our major milestones that we had in mind, and the number of people who are taking the surveys. But the surveys continue. We are going to run it right into the first week of August, so we have more people having the opportunity to take the surveys. We have been promoting them in the media in Cameroon. We'll continue to do so that more people, but we'll give you an update of the results as of the 17th of July. And then after that, we'll bring in our guests to talk about this idea of of redefining our nation, and maybe drafting a constitution, and eventually figuring out how that is going to be implemented. But that's our program for the day. Nepal, if you want any thoughts on this schedule.
Tout à fait. Nous allons parler du sondage, les derniers résultats d'il y a quelques jours, ce mois de juillet, et le sondage continue jusqu'en août, là, première quinzaine d'août, je crois. Et peut-être il faudrait dire aussi que quelques-uns dans les zones rurales auront l'occasion d'être aussi approchés dans le même sens. Et nous allons évoquer effectivement ces résultats-là qui sont très intéressants, et puis ce sera aussi l'occasion pour notre honorable invité de se prononcer sur le processus, sur ce qu'on pourrait en attendre. Donc, voilà.
Okay. At this point, we're going to invite Eric. Please, if you can join us. And everybody knows Mr. Eric Chinge. And we have typically had you come in and really contextualize the work we're doing with events in the news or developments that are taking place in our country, in Africa, and sometimes around the world.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Ray, and thanks everyone. Thanks, Paul. Again, it's amazing how the week comes and goes, and things seem to change, but never seem, always seem to remain the same. This week was another repeat in some ways of previous weeks in Cameroon. And, but as I said, the more they change, the more things seem to change, the more they remain the same. And I don't think we are totally, we're in a position to capture the trends. I don't think we are, where things are going in Cameroon, except in one sense. Change will come. And then you've got that. Change will come. That's what we're certain about. But beyond that, how it will come, what will be the ultimate trigger, we kind of are guessing, but we have no real sense of what will ultimately trigger that change. But it will come. And this week had a lot of interesting indicators. That's what I want to talk about. The 3-4 important indicators of where things are taking the country and where we might, what the ultimate, when we come out of this tunnel, what are we going to see? The most important, of course, continues to be preoccupation with the singular question, where is Paul Biya? That seems to cloud everything else. The singular question, where is the president of Cameroon? And this question is coming from everybody. It's coming from nationals, it's coming from the diaspora, it's coming from actors. And I'm sure, Dr. Fomunyo will make some reference to this when we get there. But it's coming from everywhere. Everyone is concerned. Where's Mr. Biya? What's happening to leadership in Cameroon? Now, we all know he's in Geneva, and in spite of the unwillingness or the inability of his collaborators to tell us what really is going on, we do know that Mr. Biya is not well. We do know that he's been in and out of intensive care, to the extent where some people, we've had reports of a couple of things. One, that he went into a coma. Others said he died. And others said he's just unable to walk because he had knee surgery. So there are all of these rumors. Why is the presidency of Cameroon not speaking up? There's nothing wrong with an old man of 93 being sick. There's nothing wrong. And I think that the leadership of the country has a duty to tell Cameroonians what really is going on. We don't want to wait until the ultimate outcome and then say, oh my God, we should have told you. We should have told you. Mr. Biya is 93. He is not well. And at that point, anything can happen. He can pass on to the next life. Or he may recover and come back home. But I think they owe it to every single Cameroonian to tell us what is happening, because it prepares us for the next phase. We need to prepare ourselves for the next phase. And especially, as we think of Mr. Biya's health, we see what's going on around leadership in the country. There are lots of things happening in Cameroon this past week, you heard of the accident that happened, the woman who was killed. I mean, there are all kinds of things happening.
The reason I'm curious about is because big books every day.
Somebody has their microphones on.
It should go every.
Okay. So I was saying that lots of things, of course, like in every nation, things happen. But last week, the most important things, I think, happened around leadership. And it had to do with the ongoing crisis. We've talked about this before. We talked about the clans that are fighting each other for power. But it seemed to have narrowed down this past week, to just two. What we call the Dimako clan and we call the Nanga clan. In other words, Mr. Baboke on the one hand and Mr. Ngoh Ngoh on the other. It seems to now narrow down to those two, so that they seem to be taking on each other, and the remaining clans or clan, the Beti clan, is watching. So Mr. Mutaze and Frank Biya and the rest of them are watching. But hey, it's a game I'm inviting you all to watch with pleasure, but also with a lot of attention, a lot of circumspection, because the post-Biya era is playing out. We have to keep our eyes open. It's about the post-Biya era. And the more these people can neutralize each other, the better the chances we have of precisely doing what we are trying to do here, which is help Cameroonians think ahead. That's what we're trying to do here, think ahead. So it's important to see what's going on in the country in the light of the post-Biya era. And it's in that light that you have to understand the work that Project C is doing, and we'll get to that. Now, this week, the most telling information that came out this week was from a young military officer. All of you must have heard about him, Captain Effoudou Kenneth, who went on an interview with a friend in Paris called Morgan Palmer. Captain Effoudou went on Morgan's program and made a number of revelations. He was forced out of the country by Mr. Ngoh Ngoh. He was one of the leaders, one of the head people in the information information. I'm saying, what is it?
Intelligence.
Intelligence. Thanks. Was one of the lead people in the president's office. Responsible, was the chef de service, responsible for intelligence gathering. So a key position in the nation. And one of the things they found out was some mysterious figure who went around with the title of a commander, of a major in the army, was false. He didn't have that rank, but he had all the right papers. And he was discovered with ammunition, sophisticated ammunition that the National Army does not have. And of course, the intelligence unit of the presidency made a report to the president. One thing led to the other. This fellow was arrested, but instructions came for him to be released immediately. And his weapons were not taken away. And it turned out that it was Mr. Ngoh Ngoh who was behind it. And when Mr. Ngoh Ngoh found out who had written the letter to the president about this fellow, and it turned out to be this Captain Effoudou, his problem started and he was going to be eliminated and he had to run out of the country. He ran out of the country. the question now is, he ran out of the country in 2023. Why is it now that this story is coming out? So you must see it as part of the strategy to take power in Cameroon by the clans. So it's part of the fighting between the clans. And if it's coming out now about something Ngoh Ngoh did, and Mr. Effoudou, Captain Effoudou, came out with a whole series of accusations, he's probably working for the other side, for Baboke. Though he made it very clear that that's not his intent. He's not coming out now because of the ongoing battle. But it's important to understand it from that perspective. I mean, whatever he says. And, strangely enough, a presidential decree came out last month on the 25th, exactly a month ago, dismissing Captain Effoudou from the army, along with other people. So all of this is happening at the same time. Of course, Mr. Ngoh Ngoh is doing everything to dismiss the accusations. He's accused, for example, of having said something about the president to a foreign leader, to one of the ambassadors, actually the ambassador of France, about Mr. Biya being tired, lazy, and absent. Ngoh Ngoh apparently said this to the ambassador, according to Mr. Effoudou. So this is all happening now, and we're waiting to see what the outcome ultimately will be. But it's important for Cameroonians to understand that this is part of some dangerous game that these fellows are playing. And I hope that our civil society will rise up and be ready, because we cannot wait until Mr. Biya goes, because for all we know, he may be gone before you know it. He may be even gone already. So it's important that we be ready if this country is not going to descend into the abyss, into absolute chaos. If you're interested in protecting Cameroon, you should be aware of what these fellows are doing and be ready to stand up and say no. That's, you can investigate Effoudou, Effoudou. You can investigate that to find out more. He said a lot of things. Or you can check with Morgan Palmer, like Morgan, Palmer, Palmer. He's Cameroonian though, in spite of his name. So, you can investigate these things and be aware, because it's going to be important. The last thing I want to point out from this past week is what I would call the Lamberton report, which I think Leopold, you must have dug that out from somewhere, but a very interesting report. And what's the significance of that report? It underscores what we are doing now. Because that report, which was intended for the French government back in the 50s, essentially made the case for decentralization, for federation, to split up the country. And especially, the one reason Lamberton gave in his case was what he called the Bamileke problem in Cameroon. They saw this cohesive group as dangerous to French interests. So he argued for a breakup of the country, which was at the time a colony of France. And what he proposed then, and which was adopted, is precisely what came around decades later to be at the heart of the crisis in the country right now, including what we call the Anglophone crisis. So again, it comes down to what we are trying to do, and that's why I included this in my take of last week. we are trying to lay the basis. Mr. Lamberton at the time had no clue that what he was doing would set the stage for future crisis. We are saying, no, it's time for Cameroonians not to be driven by, because Lamberton did it because of French interests. We are now saying it is time for Cameroonians to think about their own interests, and based on that, to define the foundational document that will lay the basis for governance and for sharing and for national cohesion in Cameroon. So it's time for us to speak up, and based on what we say, what we do, how we think, develop the constitution, for want of a better term. I hesitate using it because as soon as people hear constitution, the back of who are you to write a constitution? No, we are Cameroonians. We're working on this document as Cameroonians. And as you'll hear before the end of this program, a lot has been done, a lot of information has been collected, a lot of intelligence gathered, and it is based on that, based on what Cameroonians think and are saying, that we're going to develop this document for the nation. And then people will have a chance to look at it and look at what we have now. Look at what we propose and what we have now. And Cameroonians will have a chance to say, this is what we want, or this is not what we want. But right now, we don't have a choice. We're living with a document that was not developed for us, essentially. And we've had iterations of that document to respond to the needs of political actors, not of the nation. When the constitution was changed in 1984 to change that name of the United Republic of Cameroon back to Cameroon, we probably thought it was for us, had nothing to do with us. The pressure for that came from somewhere else. So let's do something for ourselves. When you think of the Constitution of 1972, it was done for oil, so that because Mr. Hijo had told the French that he would have no authority over the oil resources coming from Indian and from the Gulf of Guinea. And the French said, if that's going to be the case, bring that authority to Yaoundé. It's all of these things that led to, and it was all done through the Constitution. So this week gave us reason, one more reason, to do what we are doing with determination. And I invite every one of you, those of you on this Zoom conference and all the other platforms following, please think hard and be part of this movement, be part of this effort. That's what last week tells us. That's what the future is imposing on us. Leopold, I know I've talked too much, but I'll let you just summarize what I said, en français, mon cher frère et ami. Merci.
Merci Eric. On va y aller. Au sujet de l'actualité de la semaine au Cameroun, nous savons de toute façon avant cela que le changement arrivera au Cameroun. C'est une certitude. La seule question, c'est comment. Cela ne nous concerne pas spécialement, mais ce changement arrivera. Et tu as noté 3-4 indicateurs importants dans l'actualité de la semaine. Et le plus important de ces indicateurs, c'est la question que tous les Camerounais se posent partout dans le monde, c'est où est M. Biya? Où est passé le président Biya? Donc, c'est la question qui préoccupe tout le monde. Et nous savons qu'il n'est pas très en forme en ce moment. Ça, il n'y a vraiment pas de... Et puis il n'y a pas de communication autour de lui. Et qu'il ne soit pas en forme, c'est normal pour un monsieur de 93 ans. C'est tout à fait normal qu'il puisse ne pas avoir la pleine santé. Mais c'est bon que l'entourage, les officiels qui l'accompagnent puissent communiquer, rassurer les Camerounais à ce sujet-là. Sinon, ça laisse place à des rumeurs. Et Dieu sait qu'il y en a beaucoup à travers les réseaux sociaux. Et ceux qui défendent, ceux qui justifient, ceux qui condamnent, on les lit tous les jours dans les réseaux sociaux. Donc, les responsables ont l'obligation de communiquer pour pouvoir rassurer. Parce que nous le savons tous, tout peut arriver à tout moment. De toutes les manières, quand on voit l'espérance de vie au Cameroun, à ce niveau-là, c'est du bonus pour tout le monde. Tu as aussi parlé du fait que sur la base de ces informations, de ces rumeurs que nous écoutons ça et là, nous avons le devoir à progresser de nous préparer pour la suite, de rappeler aux Camerounais que nous devons nous préparer pour la suite. C'est-à-dire que ce qui se passe en ce moment, c'est la crise que nous vivons en ce moment. Nous voyons principalement deux camps qui sont en train de s'affronter, vraiment sans merci, et puis les autres camps observent. Et ce qui est en jeu, en fait, cette bataille, c'est l'après Biya. Et le travail de Project C en ce moment est justement fait l'effet d'apporter des éléments de réponse, d'apporter d'aider vraiment l'opinion à se préparer à cela. Puis, tu as aussi rappelé une actualité très communiquée en ce moment. On le voit maintenant dans tous les réseaux sociaux. C'est l'interview accordée au journaliste Morgan Palmer par le capitaine Effoudou, qui, quand il était en activité, il est aujourd'hui en exil, apparemment depuis 3 ans à peu près. Quand il était encore en fonction ici au Cameroun, il était chef de service des renseignements à la présidence là-bas. Et il a principalement relaté un fait. Il y a 3 ans, on se souvient, on avait parlé de ça, un monsieur, un Camerounais, qui a été intercepté et on lui a donné l'autorisation de rentrer au pays avec des armes sophistiquées qui ne figurent même pas dans les dotations de nos forces de défense et de sécurité. Il passait pour un commandant, un chef d'escadron de la gendarmerie, c'est-à-dire un commandant de l'armée, et renseignement pris par le jeune capitaine Effoudou, il était plutôt un servant de la Légion étrangère en France, qui a fait un certain nombre de missions à l'étranger, en Irak et tout ça. Et donc, il est arrivé au Cameroun, selon le capitaine, avec l'appui du ministre de l'administration territoriale. Et le rapport que ce capitaine a fait au président a provoqué un certain nombre de vagues. Il indexe principalement le ministre Ngoh Ngoh, qui serait contre lui, qui aurait décidé d'en finir avec lui, ce qui a favorisé donc son exil il y a 3 ans. Cette personne du nom d'un certain Mohamedou, on avait ordonné qu'il soit libéré, mais l'armement qu'il avait ramené au Cameroun ne lui a pas été remis. Donc, il a été saisi. Alors, il est donc, tout cela rappelle qu'il est important que les Camerounais soient prêts pour l'après M. Biya. Parce que pourquoi est-ce que ça pose un certain nombre de questions? Et déjà, il faudrait rappeler que cet élément diffusé par Morgan Palmer, ils l'ont dit, c'était un premier élément d'une série. Donc, ça veut dire que ce capitaine devra encore certainement parler. Et la question, c'est pourquoi maintenant? Il y a des documents qui ont aussi circulé sur sa révocation du corps de la gendarmerie qui aurait eu lieu en 2024 et ce n'est qu'en 2026 que ce document a été rendu public. Alors pourquoi maintenant? Donc une certaine opinion estime que c'est le camp Baboké qui sera en train de réagir contre le camp Ngoh Ngoh. Mais à cela ne tienne, nous devons rester vigilants, extrêmement vigilants sur ce qui se passe. Donc, il est important d'être prêt parce que tout peut arriver. Et ce capitaine a aussi, par ailleurs, révélé que le ministre Ngoh Ngoh aurait dit informer l'ambassadeur de France sur l'état du président Biya qui ne serait pas bon et autres. Donc, puis Eric a terminé avec l'élément qui a été diffusé, tiré du document du colonel Jean Lamberton, un colonel français qui était en poste au Cameroun à l'époque où nous étions encore sous protectorat de la France, qui avait fait un rapport qui était paru dans la revue de la Défense nationale en France en mars 1960. Ce document avait été particulièrement marquant parce qu'il interpellait les autorités françaises sur la situation du Cameroun au lendemain donc de l'indépendance. Et c'est l'homme qui avait dit que le Cameroun prend son indépendance avec un caillou dans sa chaussure, c'est le peuple babiliqué. Et il avait fait un certain nombre d'analyses qui, aujourd'hui, débouchent sur la crise dite anglophone, parce que Lamberton n'était pas du tout d'accord qu'on accorde une certaine autonomie aux régions. Et cela pose effectivement un problème que nous souhaitons résoudre à travers le travail que nous sommes en train de faire en ce moment sur le Cameroun de demain, le nouveau Cameroun que nous souhaitons. Ça pose effectivement un problème de la forme de l'État. Et les Camerounais se prononcent de façon claire dans ce sens-là à travers le sondage que nous faisons. On se rappelle que c'est toujours lié à la forme de l'État. Et puis, à Project C, on a fait des travaux à ce sujet qui ont été diffusés il y a quelques semaines sur les comparaisons des constitutions de 1961, 1972, 1996. Et on rappelle que c'est en 1984 que le Cameroun a changé de nom et passé de la République fédérale à la République unie. La République unie à la République du Cameroun. Et en 1972, on est passé de la République fédérale à la République unie. Et ça, c'était parce que suite à la découverte du pétrole dans la zone du nord-ouest-sud-ouest, principalement dans la zone du sud-ouest, les Français estimaient qu'il fallait absolument sur cette main. Il a estimé que non, c'était les populations locales qui devaient s'occuper de leurs ressources en priorité. Et instruction a donc été donnée de changer la forme de l'État pour que l'État central puisse mettre la main sur cette manne-là. Donc, c'est la découverte du pétrole qui amène le champ. Je crois que la découverte du pétrole a eu lieu vers 64-65. C'est ce qui amène le Cameroun à passer de la République fédérale à la République unie en 1972. Donc, voilà un peu. Mais toute cette actualité, comme tu l'as dit, Eric, ça ne fait que renforcer notre détermination à faire le travail que nous avons engagé et qui est absolument prometteur. Et c'est très motivant pour nous tous, pour toute l'équipe. Donc voilà un peu, grosso modo.
Merci, Hélène. J'aimerais ajouter un élément, surtout pour nos frères et sœurs francophones.
Oui.
Le fait que c'est en 84 que le mot Ambazonie
très bien.
est sorti.
Très bien.
En 84, quand M. Biya a changé la constitution pour revenir, n'est-ce pas, à la République du Cameroun,
qui existait déjà depuis 60.
Avant la République fédérale en 1960. Dès qu'il a fait ça, pas par référendum, hein, c'est par décret présidentiel pratiquement, où il a changé la constitution, quelques leaders anglophones se sont dit, ah mais tiens, le monsieur a décidé donc de quitter la République unie du Cameroun et de rentrer en arrière. Quand ce pays s'appelait République du Cameroun, une partie de ce pays. Donc, pour eux, M. Biya a décidé de couper la partie Cameroun orientale de la République unie du Cameroun. Et pour eux, donc, ils se sont dit, ah, rien ne nous reste, on va créer dans notre République qu'on va appeler l'Ambazonie. C'est pour ça qu'il faut que les gens comprennent d'où est venu, n'est-ce pas, les soi-disant ambazoniens aujourd'hui. C'était grâce à cet acte du président. Et c'est pour ça qu'il faut corriger tout ça dans la Constitution une fois pour toutes.
Absolument. Et juste une petite note d'humour à ce sujet-là. Quand nous étions au lycée, 72, lorsqu'on est passé de la République fédérale à la République unie, on rigolait un peu en disant que les gens n'avaient pas de choix. Ils n'avaient qu'à choisir qu'entre oui et yes pour quitter l'État fédéral. Donc, voilà. D'où le plébiscite. Bref, nous devons
very much
Cameroun
helping us with that translation. And Eric, thank you for sharing with us the contextualizing why it's necessary and important for us to do this work. We have been working on the surveys, the once and for all survey, once and for all, because it's important for us to resolve these outstanding issues that has led to a lot of loss of life and property and displacement and thousands of people having to leave out of the country because of all of this foundational and structural challenges in our country, that we cannot just continue to live with them without finding a sustainable solution to these challenges. And to do that, we have to essentially abandon what the challenges of the past and build the future, having learned what we have learned for 65 years. We need to be able to build a future that is different, that is prosperous, that will complete for once and for all this whole project called Cameroon. That's what we've been trying to do. And we thank everybody that has been taking the surveys. If you are just joining us, I have put the links for the surveys, and I'll drop it again. This link for the survey in English, and I'll put the one for the survey in French. If you are just joining us, please take the survey. It will take 3 to 5 minutes on your phone, and you can do it only once. Share it with others. The more people who yes. Yes. The survey is anonymous. We wouldn't know who took the survey, but if you are joining us and you haven't taken it, please do well to take the survey and share the links with others. Let me also thank those of you that are joining us on other platforms, and Mimi for Facebook and YouTube, on
malgré les quelques soucis qu'on veut lui créer.
Yes. With all her challenges created by this regime. Thank you for joining us, and please continue to share the survey links. If you haven't taken it, please make sure you take it.
At this point, we're going to give you an update on the survey results. And what we have done is taken the data and leveraged AI, and it's helped us get some results that we're seeing that are fascinating, that we really want to share with you today. I think we will start with the English, and then we will go to the French one. So let me begin with the results in English, an analysis of those results by way of video. Okay, here we go. Okay.
Hey, Focus Learners, welcome back. I am so thrilled to have you here for this explainer. Today, we're taking a really fascinating data-driven journey into the heart of Central Africa to examine the results of the Once and For All campaign questionnaire. This data captures the complex, beating pulse of a nation that is facing immense challenges, yet looking fiercely toward the future. By relying strictly on the numbers, we're going to unpack exactly what the citizens are saying about their identity, their government, and their hopes. Let's get right into it. Okay, let's dive into this. What you're seeing is the official logo for Project Cameroon's Once and For All campaign. Now, just to set the stage, everything we're discussing today is drawn directly and exclusively from the data gathered during this specific campaign, which ran from July 18th to July 24th, 2026. So this isn't hearsay or speculation. This is a direct reflection of the respondents' voices captured during that crucial 7-day window. We've got a lot of ground to cover, so here's our roadmap. First up, who took the survey? Second, identity versus inequality. Third, a crisis of trust. Fourth, the Anglophone crisis. And finally, visions for the future. Section 1. Who took the survey? Demographics of the respondents. So right out of the gate, you need to know that these respondents skew heavily young. I mean, nearly half of them, 46.3% to be exact, fall right into the 18 to 35 age bracket. The rest, they're split perfectly down the middle, with 26.9% age 36 to 55 and another 26.9% over the age of 55. This youthful majority is absolutely crucial context to keep in the back of your mind as we unpack their demands for reform a bit later on. Now, looking at the gender split, there is a pretty significant disparity here. A substantial majority, just over 70%, identify as male, while roughly 30% identify as female. It's a really important data point to remember when we think about how all these perspectives are aggregating. So the crucial point is understanding exactly where these voices are coming from. Geographically, they're highly concentrated in the Southwest and Northwest regions, but we're also seeing a really strong 19.2% showing from the diaspora. As for their day jobs, this data set is heavily driven by students and private sector workers. Together, they actually make up over half the respondents. All right, Section 2, Identity versus Inequality, the central paradox. We have to start with a foundational baseline. Despite all the systemic challenges we're going to talk about, a clear majority of respondents, 56.8%, say yes, they feel proud to be Cameroonian. So right away, that establishes that there's this deeply rooted core sense of national identity and pride running through this group. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer collision of ideals versus reality. On one hand, you've got this massive, almost unanimous desire for cultural protection. Literally, 98% of people say it's critical for the Constitution to protect all languages and cultures. But then you juxtapose that with the grim reality on the ground. Almost 85% state that right now, ethnic groups are absolutely not treated equally in Cameroon. It's a massive glaring gap between what people desperately want their country to be and what they actually experience day to day. Which, of course, naturally leads us to ask the exact same question the survey asked its respondents. Do you trust public institutions? We're talking the government, parliament, the courts. Knowing that massive gap between ideals and reality we just saw, how do you think they answered? That brings us to Section 3, a crisis of trust, governance and corruption. Well, when asked if they trust public institutions, a staggering 87.7% outright said no. I mean, wow, that is not just a slight majority, right? That is an overwhelming, undeniable consensus of distrust aimed squarely at the government, the parliament, and the courts. And when we start digging into why that distrust exists, the data tells a pretty stark story. An almost universal 97.5% of respondents state that corruption has directly affected them or their community. That is wild. It's basically a universal lived experience for the people taking the survey. And because of that, a similarly massive 94% believe there should be stronger punishments for corruption. And this brilliantly illustrates how the respondents actually prioritize these crises. If I asked you to guess the single biggest challenge facing Cameroon today, you might immediately think, oh, it's corruption, or maybe conflict. But actually, no. More than half the respondents, 55%, pinpoint poor leadership as the ultimate root challenge. Corruption comes in second at 19.5%, and conflict or division is down at 8.9%. They clearly see leadership as the primary bottleneck holding everything else back. Because they view poor leadership as the central issue, you see their views on power distribution highly fragmenting away from the executive branch. Get this, only 13.5% believe the president should hold the most power in the country. Instead, the vast majority want a serious decentralization of authority. You've got 38.1% wanting power to be shared equally, and another 26.4% saying Parliament should be the one holding the reins. Moving on to Section 4, the Anglophone crisis, searching for national cohesion. Here, the data reveals a massive, undeniable demand for a peaceful, structural resolution. Almost 82% explicitly say dialogue is the best way to resolve the crisis. But they want to move beyond just talking. There is near unanimous agreement on structural equality. 94% want all regions to have an equal say in national matters, and over 96% are demanding the Constitution absolutely guarantee equal rights for Anglophones and Francophones. So this populace is highly aligned on constitutional equality being the true path forward. Let's move to and see how this builds into Section 5. Visions for the future, reforms and hope. To really understand their vision for the future, the survey asked a deeply critical question, one that hits incredibly close to home for this specific demographic. Do young people have enough opportunities in Cameroon? The answer? A resounding, absolute no. Nearly 90% of respondents state that youth do not have enough opportunities. And honestly, that makes total sense and carries profound weight when you remember what we talked about earlier. Almost half of the people taking this survey are under 35. They're literally speaking directly to their own lack of current prospects. But, here's where the optimism really shines through. Despite that lack of current opportunity, when they were asked, what gives you hope for Cameroon's future? They didn't point to outside help. Almost 46% find their greatest hope in the prospect of new leaders. And the second highest source of hope, coming in at 20.1%, is simply the youth themselves. They're placing their faith squarely and completely in a new generation stepping up to the plate. And they have a very clear roadmap for this new generation. 94% are emphatically demanding that presidential term limits be included in the Constitution. 93.4% say everyday citizens must have more say in how the country is governed. And 76.2% want to take it even further. They're demanding direct citizen participation in writing a brand new constitution. They don't just want new leaders, they want an entirely new rulebook. The whole shebang. Which leaves us with this final vital thought. We've gone through the data. We've seen this incredible tension between a current reality defined by distrust and inequality and this fierce, undeniable hope for constitutional renewal and fresh leadership. The numbers from the Once and For All campaign are crystal clear. The citizens know exactly what they want. So the only real question left is, will these citizen voices be the catalyst for the structural change they so desperately desire? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, Focus Learners. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll see you next time.
Well, the numbers don't lie. I mean, if we're just leveraging the data from the surveys as people have been taking them, so that we continue to update you on the results as they keep coming in. So if you're listening,
un point clair, Harry, juste pour rappeler que les gens savent exactement ce qu'ils veulent.
Absolument, absolument. Yeah, people know exactly what they want. Yeah. The answers are blowing in the wind, so to speak. And we just need to get to a level of consciousness and implement the will of the people. But really want to highlight the youthful population because there is a huge gap between the leadership of our country and the future of the country. And the future of the country is the young people. And you can see from the surveys that the majority of the people taking the survey are young, with very little opportunities, but hopeful that the future will be better. And I think it's incumbent on us to provide that hopeful future. And I hope that this path that we are on, that I hope many more people will join us on, is the path that will lead us to resolving this, to bridging that gap once and for all. That was the survey for those taken in English. We also had the analysis in French. So we're going to have those analysis in French unless there are questions or comments that anyone has before we go into the French one. Okay. Let me do this. And here we go.
Salut tout le monde et bienvenue dans ce décryptage de l'enquête de juillet 2026 intitulée « Une bonne fois pour toutes ». Aujourd'hui, on plonge tête la première dans les données brutes directement issues du terrain pour vraiment écouter la voix du peuple camerounais. Attention, le but ici, c'est de rester 100% objectif. On va juste laisser parler les chiffres. Et quels chiffres ? Rien que la perception de 88% des citoyens camerounais face aux institutions publiques et aux élections équitables, waouh, c'est une sacrée claque. On a là une vraie radiographie de l'opinion publique actuelle et on va décortiquer tout ça ensemble. C'est parti. Au programme aujourd'hui, on a 5 grandes étapes. D'abord, le profil des répondants. Ensuite, la méfiance envers les institutions. En 3, on parlera du fléau de la corruption, suivi des exigences envers le pouvoir exécutif, pour enfin terminer sur l'avenir constitutionnel. Allez, on attaque tout de suite avec notre première partie, le profil des répondants, la voix de la jeunesse. Et là, on a un chiffre qui saute littéralement aux yeux, 66,5%. C'est le pourcentage de répondants qui ont entre 18 et 35 ans. C'est énorme. En fait, l'engagement politique des 18-35 ans définit complètement le ton et l'urgence de cette enquête. Ces engagements politiques 18-35 ans, ce n'est pas juste un petit détail statistique, c'est le signal d'alarme d'une jeunesse qui veut prendre son avenir en main face aux tranches plus âgées qui sont beaucoup moins représentées. Si on creuse un peu plus loin que l'âge, on atterrit sur des réalités socio-économiques super précises. On a 46,5% d'étudiants et 17% de personnes sans emploi. On note aussi que la majorité, à savoir 73,3%, sont des hommes. Et géographiquement, on a une énorme concentration avec 61,8% des voix qui viennent de la région de l'extrême nord. Donc, on est sur un profil très spécifique, des jeunes souvent en pleines études ou qui cherchent du travail. Gardons bien cette image en tête parce qu'elle explique tout le reste. Ce qui nous amène à la deuxième partie. La méfiance envers les institutions. Une véritable crise de confiance. Prenons une seconde pour digérer ce chiffre. 67,2%. Mais alors pourquoi 67,2% doutent des institutions publiques à ce point? Et pourquoi remettre-t-il en cause le fait que les élections au Cameroun soient vraiment libres et équitables? Eh bien, ce n'est pas du cynisme gratuit. C'est la preuve d'une fracture immense, vraiment profonde, entre le système et les citoyens qu'il est censé protéger. Et cette fracture, elle fait mal au quotidien. On a 77,1% des citoyens qui disent être directement touchés par des pratiques illicites. On peut se demander pourquoi 77,1% redoutent corruption publique dans leur propre quartier. Pourquoi 77,1% craignent la corruption tous les matins en se levant? La réponse est simple. Pour eux, ce n'est pas de la grande théorie politique. C'est un mur de briques permanent qui bloque tout développement et détruit la confiance à l'échelle locale. D'ailleurs, quand on leur demande quels sont les plus grands défis du pays aujourd'hui, les réponses parlent d'elles-mêmes. La mauvaise gouvernance explose les compteurs à 47,3%, talonnée par la corruption à 28,9%. Et là où ça devient super intéressant, c'est que la pauvreté et le chômage arrivent bien derrière, à 18,1%. En gros, l'opinion publique ne voit pas la misère comme une simple fatalité tombée du ciel, non, c'est perçu comme la conséquence directe d'une gouvernance défaillante. Le problème à la racine, c'est le système. Allez, on passe à la troisième partie, le fléau de la corruption et surtout l'exigence de responsabilité. Et là, l'unanimité est juste dingue. On parle d'un raz-de-marée de 94,5% qui exige des sanctions beaucoup plus sévères contre la corruption. Ce n'est pas juste réclamer des amendes, avec 94,5% d'appui constitutionnel sur la gestion du pouvoir public et la confiance publique, c'est une volonté pure et dure de tout nettoyer. C'est un appel massif pour la tolérance zéro. Ce qui nous fait glisser naturellement vers la quatrième partie, les exigences du pouvoir exécutif pour rééquilibrer la balance.
Quand on pose la question « Qui devrait contrôler l'action des agents publics ?», le contraste est fou. Le Parlement, l'acteur traditionnel, finit bon dernier, à la 3e place avec 26,2%. À l'inverse, on voit poindre un double besoin très clair de la part des citoyens. D'un côté, on comprend la nécessité des mandats présidentiels limités pour encadrer l'exécutif, et de l'autre, on a carrément 37,1% des citoyens qui exigent des tribunaux plus indépendants pour faire ce contrôle. Et 31,4% veulent même des comités de citoyens. Bref, c'est un désaveu total des circuits politiques habituels. Et si on parle de décentralisation, regardez à quel point le gâteau est coupé en parts égales. Le Parlement, le président, le pouvoir partagé et les collectivités locales, tout le monde est au coude à coude autour de 25%. Les réformes du pouvoir exécutif et les attentes démocratiques des citoyens vont vraiment dans un seul sens, le rejet catégorique d'un pouvoir hyper centralisé. On ne veut plus d'un seul homme fort, on veut des contre-pouvoirs absolus.
Ce qui nous mène à notre toute dernière partie, la numéro 5, l'avenir constitutionnel, ou plutôt une nouvelle vision démocratique. S'il y a un seul chiffre à retenir pour comprendre l'avenir du pays, c'est bien celui-là. 88,3% affirment qu'une limite des mandats présidentiels doit absolument être gravée dans le marbre de la Constitution.
Mais pourquoi 88,3% veulent cette limitation avec autant d'insistance ? Eh bien, parce que c'est vu comme la garantie ultime contre la confiscation du pouvoir, la fondation même sur laquelle rebâtir une vraie démocratie.
Et attention, vouloir réformer, ce n'est pas vouloir diviser. Au contraire, les chiffres sur la cohésion nationale sont spectaculaires. On a 92,6% qui croient dur comme fer que le dialogue est la seule issue à la crise anglophone, 93% qui exigent que toutes les régions aient voix au chapitre, et 91,5% qui veulent que la Constitution garantisse noir sur blanc l'égalité entre anglophones et francophones. C'est un cri du cœur pour l'unité.
Mais le plus beau là-dedans, c'est la méthode. 73,8% des sondés ne veulent pas juste qu'on leur ponde un texte, ils veulent carrément l'écrire eux-mêmes. Et c'est exactement pour ça, pour répondre à la question de savoir pourquoi 94,5% veulent une réforme constitutionnelle profonde et totale, parce qu'ils veulent en être les architectes, les bâtisseurs. Les décisions prises à huis clos, dans des bureaux feutrés, c'est terminé. Alors oui, le tableau peut sembler sombre avec toute cette méfiance, mais l'espoir est toujours là. C'est dingue, non ? Au milieu de la crise, 39,7% des gens trouvent de la force en croyant à l'émergence de nouveaux leaders, et 30,4% font carrément confiance au pouvoir de la jeunesse elle-même. Finalement, la bouée de sauvetage, c'est cette nouvelle génération prête à tout bousculer. Ce qui nous amène à la question à 1 million. On a là les preuves indéniables d'une population hyper engagée, ultra lucide sur la corruption et prête à tout pour limiter les abus, avec des tribunaux indépendants. Le constat est fait, les exigences sont sur la table, claires comme de l'eau de roche. Alors, face à ce mur de statistiques et cette soif de renouveau démocratique, comment le système actuel va-t-il bien pouvoir y répondre ? Le message est passé, affaire à suivre.
En tout cas,
merci beaucoup, Leopold, for working on this. It's with the help of technology nowadays, we're able to do this analysis, but this gives us a sense of what the Cameroonian people are thinking, and especially the younger Cameroonians, and their desire to participate in crafting the future of Cameroon. So it's not only left in the hands of a few. And this is the purpose of this exercise. Paul, do you have any thoughts on?
Non, juste 2-3 petits rappels que ces choses-là nous apprennent que c'est une crise des institutions. Les Camerounais, contrairement à tout ce qu'on peut penser, se font en confiance. La preuve est que plus de 92% estiment que la crise profonde doit être résolue par le dialogue. Et puis, malgré ces difficultés, ils continuent d'espérer. Et ça, cela nous interpelle dans notre travail, parce que un certain nombre de ces analyses laissent déjà apparaître, c'est-à-dire cela touche directement la forme de l'État. Parce que quand la majorité des répondants ne font plus assez confiance au Parlement, mais plutôt à d'autres instances, c'est assez révélateur. Donc, c'est juste ce que je peux dire là.
Thank you, Leopold, for that. And now I think we're going to go on to our section with our keynote speaker, having presented all of these results. But just before I do that, I will just ask that we take
a short break here, and we'll go on to, and then when we come back, we'll, and basically this break is a short video that captures the essence of the Once and For All campaign. Enjoy the music, but more importantly, the message that it carries. And at the end of that, we will then bring in our guest, Dr. Christopher Fomonu. So let me do this one more time.
For decades, Cameroonians have watched us hope slip through our fingers. Decisions about our future made behind closed doors. Our voices drowned out by power and politics again and again. We have been told who we are and what we must accept. Cameroon's destiny has been shaped by others. Cameroonians are waking up and demanding change. What kind of country do we want? What makes us Cameroonian? The soul of Cameroon is shaped not by what divides us, but by what unites us. Oh, what kind of country do we want? What makes us Cameroonian? Imagine a movement not of politicians, but of people. Imagine every corner of this country, every hamlet, village, town, city, every region, rising together with one purpose, not for an election, not for power, but for one nation, once and for all. Imagine putting country over self-love, over hate. Cameroon, not tribe, language, not region. The soul of Cameroon is shaped not by what divides us, but by what unites us. Imagine a movement not of politicians, but of people. This is not a dream, this is Project C. Imagine the street vendors, the motorcycle taxi drivers, the trade unions, traditional rulers, professionals, and the diaspora, working together everywhere for something bigger than any one of us. Oh, for the first time we, the people, will come together to answer the hardest, most important questions. How do we finally lay to rest the ghost of the past and create a future where every citizen belongs? Over the next 4 months, we will listen, we will debate, we will draft a new constitution. Oh, one that reflects our diversity, our dreams, our determination to build a Cameroon of dignity, peace, and prosperity. This is a movement born of the people, for the people. No more decisions made for us, without us. No more waiting for permission to hope. A new Cameroon is possible. Hey, not determined by our colonial past, but by our common future. Join the movement for a new Cameroon. This is Project C. This is a movement born of the people, for the people. A new Cameroon is possible. Join the movement for a new Cameroon. Join the movement for a new Cameroonian.
Well, that video was crafted to essentially communicate what the whole project, the project Once and for All, is all about. And everyone is invited to be part of this, this campaign. Again, take the surveys, share, invite others, support the campaign. It takes resources on the ground. It takes resources to communicate around this campaign. We're trying to reach all 360 subdivisions of Cameroon. We're ensuring that people in remote parts of the country are taking part in this survey. We're keeping it anonymous so that nobody feels targeted by the survey. So please take the survey and please support the campaign. You can go to projectcameroon.com to make a donation, and it will help us communicate even more effectively. But thank you to everyone that has taken the survey. You're lending your voice to the movement. Thank you to everyone who will take the survey, because we need you to take the survey as we go ahead. In the next few weeks, we're planning to form partnerships with traditional media in Cameroon and also work with some social media platforms to try to reach as many people as possible. All of that takes time, it takes resources, it takes people who need your help. Leopold, maybe you want to emphasize this as well in French, and we will have our guests.
Continuons d'inviter vraiment nos très chers concitoyens à remplir le sondage, le questionnaire. C'est vraiment très facile et il est anonyme. Et les résultats qu'on présente sont déjà assez parlants, et il s'agit, en prenant ce sondage-là, vraiment de confirmer, quoi. De confirmer. Donc, nous avons besoin de ressources pour cela, parce qu'il y a des compatriotes sur le terrain. On souhaite toucher les 360 communes. S'il vous plaît, continuez de remplir le sondage pour le questionnaire pour ceux qui ne l'ont pas encore fait. On peut le remplir qu'une seule fois. Et puis, nous avons aussi besoin d'appui, de soutien, parce que faudrait que les gens sur le terrain puissent se déplacer. Voilà. Merci d'avance pour cela. Et c'est le Cameroun qui en sort gagnant de toutes les façons.
Merci beaucoup, Leopold. At this time, we're going to invite our guest, Dr. Christopher Formunium, who is the senior associate for Africa and regional director with the National Democratic Institution. Dr. Formunium is a renowned expert in governance and democracy. We are deeply honored to have you make time to be with us. This is a privilege. It's an honor. Thank you for doing this. And we really have a question that we're asking all the experts that we bring to the table, because this notion of, is a new Cameroon possible? And to that question, there are two options. If it's a new Cameroon possible? If yes, how is it possible? If no, why is it not possible? So that's the conversation that we would like to have with you, your thoughts and ideas. And then after that, we'll have questions from our audience over this subject of whether a new Cameroon is possible. But our goal is to redefine our country after learning from experts, listening to people on the ground through the surveys, having debates. We hope that we'll all grow to a position where we can redefine our country. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Ari, for those very kind words of introduction. And thank you, Leopold and Eric and the entire Project C team for what you've been doing since launching this initiative. I and many other compatriots now realize that by pivoting and broadening the scope of the conversation since the October 2025 presidential elections, you are bringing more Cameroonians into the fold, more Cameroonians into the conversation, and also helping all of us, nudging all of us to look towards the future. This is extremely thoughtful. It's extremely foresighted. And you may not even realize the depth of the investments that you are making at this point in time, because we truly have not had this kind of experience in the past. And I hope that as we go along, more of our compatriots will begin to realize that this is a platform through which their voices could be heard and through which their opinions could be taken into consideration. I really want to thank everybody that has made time this morning, this afternoon, this evening, depending on where you are, to participate in this conversation, as Ari just said. I also want to thank other Cameroonians, other patriotic Cameroonians who are providing their platforms and making their platforms available to amplify the messaging such that it could get into our brothers and sisters across the country and across the globe. To come directly to the question at hand, my response, to be categorical, is a definitive yes. A new nation is possible. A new nation is necessary. And I would say a new nation is indispensable. As lawyers would say, a new nation is the condition sine qua non of our future existence as a nation state. If we don't make that effort to bring about a new Cameroon, we are building on shaky grounds. We're trying to put up a structure without pillars. And there is no other way to say it than to say that thinking of a country without a new Cameroon, without imagining a new Cameroon, is building on very sandy soil. I say a new Cameroon is possible if we work for it. If we as Cameroonians stand up and ask for it, we would get it. The days when we would allow ourselves to be trampled upon or to be dictated to by others, those days are gone. When the country had independence and then reunification in 1961, there weren't as many Cameroonian intellectuals, experts in various areas. 70 years later, you've got Cameroonians spread across the globe. You've got Cameroonians in the homeland who've got the expertise necessary to craft institutions that are adapted to our needs. Institutions that capture the voices and the desires, the expectations, the hopes of our fellow compatriots. There is no reason why we cannot organize ourselves to make a new Cameroon inevitable. I say a new nation is necessary because the status quo is broken. It's outlived its usefulness. And that has been demonstrated in so many different ways. Eric went through the summary presentation of the week in Cameroon and Africa. And there's nothing I could add to that to demonstrate that the status quo is unacceptable. It's being challenged from multiple angles. It's been rejected at the polls, as we saw in the presidential elections of October 2025, with a vast majority of our fellow compatriots who now believe and continue to believe that Issa Tchiroma Bakary won the presidential elections of October 2025. Its legitimacy is being questioned. And in the political arena, where perceptions are as important as realities, the perceptions that our fellow citizens have about the status quo cannot be erased by force. You cannot shoot them down. You can't erase them by presidential decree. You can't erase them by communiques from the ruling party, because even within the ruling party itself, there are people who know who the rightful winner of the presidential elections of October 2025 was. And as long as that litigation, that election-related litigation, still persists in the minds of millions of Cameroonians, the current status quo is unacceptable. I also say that it is inevitable because of the contestation that we see within the country. It is palpable, it is obvious. The Northwest and the Southwest regions are an unfortunate illustration of the degree of frustration that our fellow citizens demonstrate or show with the current status quo. It's now 10 years, a full decade. Tens of thousands of people have died. Civilians, people in uniform. Villages have been erased from the map of the country, from the map of the world. Close to 1 million people are internally displaced and therefore out of their traditional areas of habitation. Close to 100,000 are refugees in Nigeria and other parts of the country, and a majority, and other parts of the continent, and a majority of these persons have disconnected themselves from the status quo. They no longer belong, they no longer identify. Just look at what is happening in the what we call the grand northern part of the country, the 3 northern regions of the country, the level of despair and hopelessness, the level of unemployment of young people. And just this week, there were demonstrations in Kuseri, and two people got shot. 2 people died because of their expressions of the frustrations that they feel, and the fact that somewhere they feel the disconnect from the present status quo with the legitimacy that should come to any government that governs. I don't even need to go into the capital with all the intrigues that we're now seeing and that Eric and Are and Leopold talked about at the beginning of the program, where there is so much uncertainty about what is authentic and what is not, about who is governing the country and who is giving instructions, and so much debate about the fact that people with no mandate, with no elective position, with no position in the line of succession of the country, are today pulling the strings to determine the well-being of over 30 million Cameroonians. And most unfortunately, when you look at that bunch, irrespective of the camps to which they belong. There is not a visionary leader in there. There is not a leader in there that has shown their mettle in how they've governed or how they've contributed to the governance of the country. On the contrary, we have individuals who are positioning themselves through the use of force, as we saw in the resolution of the post-election disputes, and the fact that thousands of our citizens are now in prison for contesting that electoral outcome. You see individuals who have been alleged to have been involved in multiple embezzlements of public funds for personal gain, and who are accumulating all of this wealth out of the public treasury for self-centered, egoistic purposes. You definitely cannot look at all of these factors, and even many more, and not come to the conclusion that the status quo cannot longer stand and that a new nation is indispensable to give a glimpse of hope to the millions of Cameroonians that we represent. How can this be done? Well, let's look at our history. And the previous speakers, Eric and Ray and Leopold, touched on this. In 1960, when the French wrote the constitution for all of their colonies, except for Guinea-Conakry, carried out in 1958. And so it's fair to say that the constitution that was received by the Republic of Cameroon, that was part of the French territories on the African continent, by 1960, was an emanation of French institutions that had been put in place in 1958 under de Gaulle, and that were imposed on all of the former French colonies. We all are aware of the fact that the discussions in Fumban that led to the reunification in 1961 have been the object of multiple contestations because of the assertions that one party came to the Fumban agreement, the Fumban conference, with a ready-made document that was already drafted for them by the French, and that they used their influence at the time to impose their will on the rest of the country. But even then, the Federal Constitution of 1961 was not respected. It lived for 10 years maximum, and then we had 1972, and the referendum that was imposed on 20% of the population in direct violation of articles of the 1961 Constitution that stipulated very clearly that for the form of the state to be amended or changed, it needed consensus taken by both sides of the federation under independent processes. And so we had 1972 thrust upon us. I still remember as a secondary school student how the whole conversation around the referendum happened. Ahiju made a few appearances in some of the regions at the time, and then people were called to the polls, and then, as Leopold said very beautifully, you had to choose between yes and we. And then we had 1986. The Constitution, then we had 1984, the presidential decree through which one individual single-handedly changed the configuration of the state. And that has led to the very negative consequences that we now face with today. As many African countries began the transition to democratic governance in the 90s, we had the Constitutional Review of 1996, which was a few political elites who got together and couldn't even develop consensus amongst themselves because some of the propositions that were being put on the table were rejected offhand. And yet, what came out of the 1996 Constitution till this date, 30 years later, not everything has been implemented. We still have people go into public office without declaring their net worth. Provisions of that constitution have not been fully implemented 30 years later. And then we had the sham process of 2028, as 2008, when a very cardinal provision of that constitution with regards to presidential term limits was amended. Cameroonians died for that in Douala, in Yaoundé, and in other cities of the country. But the amendment was still imposed on us. And that provision on presidential term limits, which would have laid the foundation for peaceful alternation of political power, was squashed. And now we have someone who wants to be president for life after having been in power for 44 years. And then a few weeks ago, overnight, on a Good Friday, which is a public holiday, the National Assembly was called in, and an amendment to the Constitution was rammed down their throats. They basically rubber-stamped it. And that amendment today has put our country in an impasse. Whether we admit it or not, Cameroon today is in an impasse. Because legally, the constitutional framework that existed before 2026 that allowed for the president of the Senate to be an interim president in case of need and to hold national elections within 120 days has been dismantled. The new setup that allows one individual to appoint whoever he wants, whatever their background, whatever their qualifications, whatever their personal affiliation with him, into the position of a vice president, with the possibility that this one individual could become the president of Cameroon for more than 6 years, if they wanted, with no mandate from the people, is unacceptable. Besides, the vast majority of Cameroonians today believe that Paul Biya is no longer physically or intellectually in a state of mind to sign a presidential decree appointing someone as important as a vice president. We are truly at an impasse. And if we do not invest in thinking about the future and preparing ourselves to be part of that future in a very substantive manner, we would have lost the opportunity to have the pillars for a viable nation state. And that's why I say very categorically that a new nation state, a new Cameroon is indispensable. And I sincerely thank Project C for initiating this conversation. I hope that the millions of other Cameroonians can join in this conversation, because when you look at the African continent, and even though democratic governance and democracy are in decline today, we have had a period of 3 decades, over 30 years, in which democracy has thrived, in which former one-party rules, one-party regimes collapsed and opened the way for political pluralism, in which military regimes were sent back to the barracks. In fact, for the younger generation in our midst and in this conversation, prior to 1990, there were only 4 countries on the African continent, only 4 countries that accepted multipartyism, that allowed political parties to form, or civil society organizations to organize themselves, that even accepted independent media. And the 4 African countries were Senegal, the Gambia, Botswana, and Mauritius. Even mighty South Africa was still under the apartheid regime. Nigeria was still under military rule. And the rest of the continent, the rest of the 50 countries on the African continent were either military regimes or one-party regimes. And so, because of that third wave of democratization that began with the independence of Namibia, and then the whole process of national conferences, we have been able to enjoy a period of relative democratic governance. And we have seen how civil society has become vibrant, how young Africans have stepped forward and had their voices heard, how independent media has emerged just in the past 30 years, in the past 3 decades. We have seen the benefits, even if today we also feel some headwinds and some backsliding. One of the lessons to draw from that experience is that the countries that went through a people-driven process, you can call them national conferences or other forms of consultations, that had open, inclusive, consultative processes to rewrite their constitutions, are the countries that rode that wave of democratization the longest. If countries like Benin are still standing tall today, it is because they took this kind of inclusive, open process where citizens had a say in terms of what they wanted to see in their constitutions. It has taken us this long, but it's never too late. However, we must keep in mind that if we do not seize this opportunity, what some of us have dreamed about as a nation state may not come to pass. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I really did say this is meant to be a conversation. I look forward to responding to each and every one of your questions. I really appreciate the fact that you all made the time to join us today. And I look forward to a meaningful and substantive conversation, being very comfortable myself in letting everyone know that I took the time to fill the survey. My responses are in the feedback that you so eloquently, with support from AI, summarized for us, which really match where I think the majority of Cameroonians are today. Thank you very much for your time and attention, and I look forward to your questions.
Well, thank you. This has been brilliant. It's really taken us on a journey, a learning journey, an educational journey, but also an inspirational journey, one that tells us that there is hope somewhere if we do what we have to do. There's always a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, but you have to cross the bridge to get there. And that bridge is what we're trying to build together. For too often, we almost imagine that there's a magic wand to get us. We know where the Cameroonian people from the service have aspirations of what they want. And the question which I see from the Nkumi, it says, what is expected of us, the people? Is there any active strategy in place to make the people governing give up power? So this is a two-part question, which we may not necessarily know how to get the people in power, what we can do to make them give up power. But I think we know what we can do, or at least we can try to figure out together what we can do. But Dr. Chris, I don't know how you would answer somebody who asks what is expected of us, the people.
Peut-être juste résumer les 3 points importants que...
Okay, yes, I'm from... Okay.
Oui. là, vraiment, là, de façon claire et nette, est-ce qu'un nouveau Cameroun est possible? Il dit oui, sans embâche, sans discussion, sans contestation, et il le justifie par 3 points très importants. Il dit, premièrement, c'est possible. Deuxièmement, c'est nécessaire. Troisièmement, c'est inévitable. C'est une condition sine qua non pour redécoller. C'est obligatoire. Et il le justifie rapidement. Possible parce que possible si nous travaillons pour cela. Bon, que nous essayons de faire déjà en ce moment. Et aussi, nous avons l'expertise pour cela. Les Camerounais, ils brillent partout dans le monde et même localement, vraiment, de ce point de vue, il n'y a aucun doute. Deuxième point nécessaire, parce qu'il faut mettre un terme, il faut en finir avec le status quo. Et qu'il a rappelé d'ailleurs, le status quo qui s'est manifesté à travers les urnes. Clairement, le président Issa Tchiroma a été élu, mais on voit ce qui se passe. Et le statu quo, il le rappelle, ne peut pas être changé par décret et autres. Et puis, troisièmement, c'est inévitable. Inévitable parce que vraiment, les contestations populaires sont visibles, elles sont palpables à travers le pays. Et avec tous les déplacés que nous avons, les quantités, vraiment, il ne faut même pas revenir dessus parce que c'est choquant. Les déplacés, les exilés, les villages qui ont été détruits. Bref, c'est inévitable de reconstruire, donc ça ne peut se faire que dans un nouveau Cameroun. Alors, donc la réponse est oui, mais comment? On a rappelé l'historique des différentes constitutions et il termine effectivement en disant que nous sommes dans une impasse. Donc, c'est vraiment nécessaire d'en sortir. C'est obligatoire d'en sortir. Et Dr. Chris, l'expérience africaine, panafricaine, mondiale, on ne revient plus dessus. Il a été dans plusieurs pays et donc il sait comment ça se passe. Et les pays qui sont passés par des revendications populaires, de conférences nationales, et notamment le cas du Bénin, avec une forte participation populaire, on arrive à voir que ces pays-là décollent. Une petite question comme ça en passant, quand il rappelait l'historique des constitutions, nous voyons que pour le cas particulier du Cameroun, nous voyons l'influence énorme que la France a eue sur le Cameroun et autres. Et une petite question subsidiaire, c'est comment est-ce qu'on pourrait s'en sortir tout seul malgré toute cette expertise sans des influences extérieures et autres au point où nous sommes rendus? Donc voilà un peu.
Merci beaucoup, Léopold, for helping us with that resume, which I think is very apt. So we have that first question, but I also see that Louisette has her hand up. So we'll just combine that. Louisette, if you can go ahead and ask your question, and then we'll come back to our guest.
Thank you. I first want to thank Dr. Fomignon for being so eloquent and intentional with everything. I do agree that it's possible, necessary, and like we say in the streets, a no-brainer that we definitely need. My question is twofold and kind of ties into the one that was posed in the chat. Strategically, I'm going to play the devil's advocate here and get us to think further, because sometimes we can start a movement and with fire and the excitement, and then the fire kind of sizzles down. Do we have a plan, or a plan that gives us a guideline as to, so now we have this data, how do we manifest, or how do we solidify or bring it to task to where we actually come up with something tangible? And how do we approach the people in power that we are supposed to address? Or do we just have a conversation? How do we go beyond having a conversation? How do we actualize the data that we have and come up with something that is functional and practical besides just having a conversation? Because we can have conversations all day, and that's where we end, is with these conversations. So do we have a plan in place to have, how do we get someone ready if Biya is no more? How do we affect that change? Because that's been my concern. If something happens and they say, oh, Biya is no more, and we're having a conversation, but we don't have actually something tangible and practical, how do we make that happen? How do we strategize to where our voices, our conversations matter, actually, where it matters?
Thank you very much, Lizette. There are two other hands up, and I just want to make sure that we get all the questions. So I'll ask them to give their question there as well. So when our speaker is responding, he can respond to numerous questions, because I have a feeling that we'll have many questions. So Lizette, thank you very much for the question. We'll come to the response. I will go on to Francis. Francis, if you can ask your question.
Okay. Thank you, sir, for giving me this opportunity to ask my question. I will go in French.
Oui.
Je dis merci au professeur Dr. Fomoyo pour son temps qu'il a bien voulu, n'est-ce pas, nous partager de sa riche expérience. Je suis Francis Kwikwa, je suis historien. Et ma question va dans ce sens. Étant donné que les nations se bâtissent en regardant aussi la manière dont les autres ont réussi. Je vais faire référence ici à la Tanzanie. Nous avons vu la Tanzanie, qui est un ensemble de Tanganyika et de Zanzibar, qui sont passés presque dans les mêmes fourchettes et qui, ma foi, semblent avoir réussi. Qu'est-ce qu'on peut tirer? Est-ce qu'il n'est pas possible de regarder aussi vers là où les autres sont passés et ont réussi? Est-ce que ce ne sera pas une occasion pour nous de regarder dans ce sens, étant donné que ce que nous avions eu à mettre sur pied depuis 61 n'a pas assez marché? Si oui, ça pouvait peut-être marcher, mais j'ai comme impression en tant qu'historien qu'il y a eu un camp qui a floué l'autre. Et en Tanzanie, les choses semblent avoir réellement marché parce que peut-être les hommes qui ont, n'est-ce pas, qui ont été à la base de cette situation étaient suffisamment honnêtes. Parce qu'il y a aussi une bonne, pour moi, il a manqué de l'honnêteté chez nous. Et en Tanzanie, je vois de l'honnêteté. On a vu que au moment où la Tanzanie, le Tanganyika et le Zanzibar, par exemple, se mettaient sur pied, des leaders du Tanganyika et ceux du Zanzibar, on a puisé une benne de terre du Tanganyika et une benne de terre du Zanzibar qu'on a mixé, une benne de terre. Et sur ce tas de terre, on a planté des arbres purement symboliques. Et ma foi, en un mot, je suis en train de voir que la Tanzanie semble avoir réussi ou a réussi. Est-ce qu'il n'est pas temps pour nous de regarder vers là où ceux-là qui ont aussi réussi pour voir comment nous pouvons, n'est-ce pas, rebondir et construire notre nation tel que vous le présentez, docteur? Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Francis. Very, very crucial question. And it was one of the questions that we had prepared to ask Dr. Fomoyu. So it's very aligned. Thank you. The next question goes to Bennett, and then after that we'll have answers. Bernard, thank you for joining us. You have the floor.
Thank you all. Good morning, Dr. Chris.
Morning.
How do we make this, how do we professionalize this and make it sustainable? On the other side, those who are in power are using all the resources of the state to hire PR firms, hire military, hire mercenaries, in fact, everything. But on this other side, we need a different form of organization to keep it sustainable and to make it worthy for people to invest their time, their energy, their resources. How does that work? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bernard.
Yes.
Merci infiniment pour les questions, Francis. C'est un réel plaisir de voir que l'émission est suivie par les compatriotes qui sont des historiens, parce qu'on compte beaucoup sur vous pour faire la recherche et pour mieux sensibiliser les nôtres, pour les rassurer que là où les autres pays ont réussi, nous pouvons nous aussi réussir. Je vais prendre votre question en même temps avec la question qui a été posée par Léopold pour dire, mais est-ce que nous pourrions nous en sortir compte tenu du rôle de la France? Je commence par là pour dire que aujourd'hui, nous avons beaucoup plus de chances de réussir avec ou sans la France qu'il y a de cela 60 ans. Le monde a évolué, le monde a changé. Nous ne sommes plus dans les histoires de précaré. Nous ne sommes plus dans un monde bipolaire. Nous avons une multiplicité des partenaires, des grandes puissances comme des puissances moyennes. Nous devrons aborder les discussions sur l'avenir de notre pays avec fierté, avec dignité et sans complexe. Parce que ceux-là qui viennent à Yaoundé nous donner des leçons sur des contrats, parfois ce sont des enfants que nous avons enseignés dans des universités en Europe ou aux États-Unis. Mais lorsqu'ils rentrent dans notre propre pays, en costume et cravate, on leur donne des contrats de consultation. Et il y en a de mes propres élèves qui sont revenus me dire, professeur, j'étais dans votre pays. Et voilà ce que j'ai fait, et on m'a beaucoup apprécié. Mais c'était mes élèves. Nous avons des Camerounais en milliers qui sont des professeurs d'université dans les plus grandes universités du monde. Nous ne devrons plus nous faire une complexe aucune dans des discussions par rapport à l'avenir de notre pays. Et vous savez, le président Macron, je n'ai rien contre lui, mais il a été stagiaire à l'ambassade de France à Lagos. Il connaît comment le Nigeria vit, il connaît le poids du Nigeria. Et c'est pour cela qu'aujourd'hui, on voit que Tinubu se rapproche beaucoup plus de la France que de la Grande-Bretagne. Mais c'est un choix que Tinubu a fait. Et si nous voyons ce qui se passe dans le Sahel, ce n'est pas que j'approuve le régime militaire, comme vous le savez tous, je suis contre les pushs. Et je vois qu'ils sont en train de faire beaucoup de mal à leurs concitoyens avec la propagande. Ça, c'est autre chose. Mais qui aurait pu croire qu'après le discours très paternaliste que Macron a tenu à Ouagadougou, devant Campaoré, le président Gaboré, qui aurait cru que quelques années après, le Burkina Faso va sortir de la zone d'influence de la France et tout le Sahel avec. Et les pays du Sahel, c'est des pays qui ne pèsent même pas par rapport au Cameroun. Nous pesons beaucoup plus. Valorisons ce que nous avons. Nous avons le muscle. Le muscle, c'est à nous de jouer. C'est à nous de valoriser cela et de nous imposer Je ne reviendrai pas sur le cas du Rwanda. Le Rwanda, c'est un petit pays par rapport au Cameroun. On peut traverser tout le Rwanda par route dans 2-3 heures du temps. Le Rwanda a pu se développer en sortant de cette influence nuisible de la France. Les conditions étaient différentes, bien sûr. Il y a eu le génocide, il y a eu le gouvernement de Mitterrand et toute leur implication dans ce génocide qui a constitué un environnement psychologique qui a permis au Rwanda de se retirer un peu, d'aborder d'autres partenaires, et on a vu comment le Rwanda s'est développé. Aujourd'hui, effectivement, les relations sont bonnes avec la France. Il n'y a pas de raison pour ne pas garder de bonnes relations avec les pays.
Mais sur d'autres bases, tout simplement.
Mais sur notre base, en protégeant nos intérêts. Et aujourd'hui, je suis confiant que si le peuple camerounais est unanime dans sa marche vers un changement véritable, on l'obtiendra. On l'obtiendra. On trouvera des partenaires qui vont respecter notre souveraineté populaire, comme cela avait été manifesté par nos populations lors de l'élection présidentielle d'octobre 2025, qui avait été gagnée par Issa Tchiroma Bakary. Ça, c'est une évidence. Et est-ce que nous sommes en train de réussir, et je reviendrai sur la question de Arrêt, par rapport à la question qui a été postée dans le chat, par rapport à ce que nous attendons de la population et ce qu'on peut faire pour que ceux qui ont usurpé le pouvoir puissent vaquer les lieux. Francis a parlé de l'expérience de la Tanzanie. C'est très intéressant parce que c'est un pays aussi qui a connu une sorte de fédération à l'époque. C'est un pays qui vit avec deux populations de l'île de Zanzibar et du mainland, comme ils disent chez eux, l'ancien Tanganyika. Et la curiosité de la Tanzanie aujourd'hui par rapport au Cameroun, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, la Tanzanie a connu et à son 5e président de la République depuis leur indépendance. Et nous n'avons eu que 2. Pendant les 40...
On économise nos présidents, docteur.
Vous dites, Léopold?
On économise nos présidents, on ne les gaspille pas, on n'en a que 2.
C'est une façon de le dire. Comme nous sommes obligés, dans le contexte actuel, parfois pour se donner un peu d'oxygène, de transformer nos défis en blagues. C'est une sorte pas d'anesthésie, mais de cathisme. Il faut se soigner un peu et on blague. Mais on sait que pendant les 44 ans, qu'un seul individu se maintenait à la tête de l'État, pendant les 44 ans, la Tanzanie a connu 4 chefs d'État. Et aujourd'hui, par coïncidence, la Tanzanie a comme président de la République une femme qui de plus est de la Zanzibar. Et voilà un élément qui vient consolider leur unité. Le débat sur la démocratie et la démocratisation, la bonne gouvernance en Afrique aujourd'hui, c'est un débat facile. Parce qu'on peut trouver à l'intérieur du continent des cas de pays qui réussissent à surmonter les différents défis auxquels ils sont exposés. On n'a pas besoin d'aller loin. On n'a plus besoin de gens qui nous disent que ça ne peut pas se faire en Afrique. Et c'est ça l'opportunité que nous avons aujourd'hui. Le champ est ouvert. C'est à nous d'être innovateurs, innovatrices, innovateurs dans notre approche. C'est à nous de penser la chose et de se concerter sur comment la mettre en œuvre. Et cela rejoint la question qui a été posté, que Harry a demandé tout à l'heure, qu'est-ce que nous attendons de nos populations? What do we expect from our people? We expect our people to wake up, to become more aware of their rights and responsibilities as citizens, to realize that as wicked as the regime has been in terms of how they've treated fellow compatriots, they're not going to kill 30 million Cameroonians. Along those lines, I really want to, give a shout out to what Issa Tchiroma Bakary is done with the cases, the criminal cases that he has filed. Some people may take this lightly, but criminal cases do not disappear from the dock once they've been filed. Someone is going to make an investigation. The investigation can free some people, but it can also give us even more information that we know. Ultimately, someone is going to be held accountable. Yeah. And the fact that this is the first time that a politician has shown the courage to name in a criminal suit individuals who are responsible for killings of their own fellow citizens is remarkable. Let us not forget that Rwanda is still pursuing some of those who took an active role in the genocide of 1994. This is 32 years later. Let's not forget, and let's remind them, in fact, we are not forgetting, let's remind them in our conversations, in our social postings, that even the state of Israel, till this day, is still looking for people whose parents contributed to the Holocaust, who played one role or the other in the Holocaust. And this is what happened more than 70 years ago. So the more we remind people that they will be individually held accountable for the way in which they treat their fellow citizens, the more they're going to think twice before they continue to exercise the level of repression that we have seen in our country that makes some even military regimes pale in comparison. So we have to remind our fellow citizens to be awake, to be alert, to be assertive. And this is one of those things that I hope will be a priority for the next government. When some of us grew up in West Cameroon, before the Northwest and Southwest regions, civics was a subject that was studied in primary and secondary schools. We had civics lessons. And so we grew up very aware of our rights. We knew how to write petitions. Our parents, even parents who couldn't read or write, knew how to get their children to write petitions on their behalf to the divisional officer and not get arrested for that. Today, under this regime, we have seen fellow compatriots go to jail just for writing a petition to the minister who is supposed to receive your petition, for putting a social posting that expresses your view. So we have to be having these conversations with our fellow citizens to say you have certain fundamental rights that are guaranteed in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that are guaranteed in the preamble of our Constitution. Those are your rights. Feel comfortable to stand up and speak out. These people will not kill 30 million Cameroonians to stay in power. Okay. We also should not assume that they're winning. They are not winning. They have already lost the legitimacy battle. In Cameroon, the reason why people are protesting, the reason why people are manifesting their discontent so publicly, the reason why people are feeling detached, the reason why people are feeling disconnected from the state is because in their eyes, in their minds, these people have lost legitimacy. So they're not winning. Do you think they are comfortable You should have listened to the speech of the Secretary General of the ruling party when they had a caucus meeting the other day. He basically, if you read through between the lines, he basically acknowledged that the tide is not in their favor. They know, they read the newspapers, they have family members, they talk to other people, they see how many people came to the inaugural, how many heads of states, 0. They know how many people did not send messages of congratulations after the elections. Who did? And so let's not live in the mindset that they're winning. They're not winning. We just have to organize ourselves. And then to the question that was raised by Bernard, we have to look for ways to aggregate. There are multiple initiatives on their way. And that's all good. Let 1,000 flowers blossom. Let 1,000 flowers, is it bloom or blossom? But ultimately, if we can find a way to aggregate everything that's being done so that the landing is substantial or substantive and impactful, we are going to be able to position ourselves at that level where we can pull the levers and make the decisions and redirect the country in the right direction. I feel that the time is fast approaching. I feel that there's a hunger for change. I feel that people want, at a minimum, that the popular legitimacy that was expressed in October 2025 be respected. And my sense is that if we can aggregate all of these forces, when the window opens, and it would open very soon, we would go through it, and then we will open the doors so all Cameroonians can come into the house. And then we will figure out what has gone wrong. And then we will figure out how we do the reconciliation. We will figure out how we give back what has been taken unjustly from people. And then we will figure out how we build a better, prosperous, more equitable and just nation where everyone would feel that they have a seat at the table and their voice is being heard. It's doable. We just have to find a way to aggregate all of the initiatives at the appropriate time and make them land. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Chris, for that. I see we have one more question which we're going to take from Vivian. And then because we're above our time. It goes by so fast, but that's because we're discussing something that's really important and crucial for our country. Just before I go on to Vivian, I just want to say to everybody who is in doubt about what we can do together, the best thing to do is join us, join your voice, help us do what we need to do to get there. We don't have all the answers, but maybe with you being part of the conversation, we can all get better in finding answers to the challenge. So if you've not taken the survey, please take the survey. I'll drop the links again, share it. If you can support us, please support so we can raise the resources to be able to prepare for what the future holds for us. But at the end of the day, if we have many more people participating, it strengthens our position and it can define the future. I say this, if you prepare for a hurricane and the hurricane comes, you may not realize the impact of the hurricane. But if you're unprepared for the hurricane and it comes, they will do much more damage. This conversation is, we know it's inevitable, the impact that our country is going to face in the next few months. What we're doing is preparing to make sure that that impact is lightened, the blow is lightened, and we build from there. So let's start building now to support that process. Let me go on to Vivian. Vivian, you have the floor for your question.
Thank you so much, Are, and thanks, Dr. Chris, for your very, very elaborate and scathing scouting report on what you've worked on for several years as NDI director. Your analysis kind of really should wake a lot of Cameroonians up. For so many years, the regime has used the argument of fear, division, and repression to, push Cameroonians to a corner where there is just so much fear, there is so much misery and frustration amongst Cameroonians. But what's kept this regime where it is and feeling so comfortable? Probably now they might be scared a little bit, but what has kept them where they are? What brought us here to this point where, we are confused what to do with these people? Because I think for the most part, the people aided and abetted this regime in so many ways, by making excuses, by, the regime looks amongst us and picks one and spoils them and makes them feel that sense of belonging, and so it's gone on and on and on, and we've been looking as though, okay, it's just 7 years, and then 7 years comes and pass. It's just another 7 years, and then 7 years comes and pass. And then last year they told us, oh, why are you all worried? It's just 7 years. It's gonna come and pass. Prepare. I mean, for the most part, that's what the regime told us when they stole the election. And I say stole with uppercase. When they stole the election, they told us, it's okay. Y'all are gonna get over it. It's just 7 years. So it's gonna go past another 7 years. Biya is gonna be dead. Yeah. I'm sorry to say, yes, he's gonna be dead, and he's gonna be ruling Cameroonians in the grave. And so my question to Dr. Chris is, let me come back to the diaspora, where I know pretty good. The diaspora has been a catalyst for most countries' economic development and so on and so forth. But Cameroonians in the diaspora have been planning to move away from Cameroon, going to different countries to invest, right? Because nothing is moving in Cameroon. So many Cameroonians in the diaspora have attempted to invest in their own countries, and it's just so difficult. And so most of them are moving to other countries to invest their hard-earned money that they've worked. On the other hand, in other countries, someday they might wake up and say, hey, go back to your country. Just like what is happening in South Africa and many other countries, in the US, in Britain, everywhere. There's that sense of far-right nationalism. Yeah. Dr. Chris, how do we, this is a pertinent question. I've been asking this from Project C and so many, it's a question that ponders, that worries me particularly. How do we bring this awareness? If the diaspora doesn't yet understand the need to aggregate, I will use your words, the need to unite, the need to attend forums, platforms like this, the need to participate, right? How does the ground, how do our people on the ground who haven't traveled, who know little about democracy, who know little about, all they know is repression, all they've grown up is repression and see, right, and witness. Yeah. How do we bring this diaspora together? How do we bring this awareness to the diaspora when they don't even want to come to attend platforms like this
and
get
thank you
that
very much.
education.
Thank you, Vivian. Just in the interest of time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Vivian. I see you very passionate about what you say. Also, I have to thank you for what you do and efforts by you and others within the diaspora to raise awareness. Worthwhile investments, and I assure you they wouldn't go for nothing. We have 4 million Cameroonians in the diaspora worldwide, broadly speaking, 4 million. In 2024, the World Bank records showed that the diaspora, the African diaspora, through remittances sent over $100 billion to the continent. I don't have the data on the percentage that went to Cameroon, but I know it's a sizable amount. We all very invested, directly or through other community initiatives, we are invested back home. The diaspora has made its presence felt at multiple crisis moments for the country. We all know after the 2011 elections, when Frundi challenged the outcome of the elections, the diaspora mobilized, the diaspora that supported Frundi mobilized heavily to amplify his messaging and to find ways to be helpful to that endeavor. Of blessed memory, bless his heart. We also know that in 2018, when Maurice Kamto contested the outcome of the presidential elections, the diaspora that was sympathetic to his cause also mobilized and provided a lot of support and amplified his messaging, as well as a lot of material support to the cause. We know also that when the Anglophone, what we call the Anglophone crisis broke, starting in 2016 and then 2017, that the diaspora from that part of the country, from the Northwest and the Southwest, that was seized with this issue, also mobilized itself to try to bring comfort and continue to do so to families, the villages that for this past 8-9 years have depended so much on things, on support coming from the diaspora, because they were cut off from the administration. Schools were shut down, hospitals and clinics were shut down, and for the most part, they've depended on humanitarian aid coming from the diaspora. So we know that the capacity is there, but we also know that the diaspora looks at what is happening in Cameroon. That hostility that you talked about just a few weeks ago, we all read, we all saw what happened to our sister, Rebecca Enochong, who dared to go invest in Cameroon and live there despite all this crisis, despite the comfort that she could have internationally, despite the fact that less than a month, she got international recognition to be elected to the vice presidency of the International Chamber of Commerce. In another country, to roll out the red carpet, the prime minister would come out and welcome her and do a joint press conference. This is a Cameroonian waving the flag at the international level. What is wrong with these people? We should all be saying that. Why are they're civil servants, for goodness sake? They've lived three decades, 4 decades, signing papers and doing nothing but signing papers and siphoning public funds. Why are they there? We should be challenging them. We shouldn't call them your excellencies. They're not. They don't deserve it. We should call them to task. We should take them to task. We in the diaspora are well placed to do that because we have access to those corridors of power that they also have access to, but we have clean hands. We can speak thoroughly about the issues that they're doing wrong for our country and our people. And the international community is tired of being accomplices in that. That's why Trump came up and he cut off foreign assistance and foreign aid. Other countries in Europe are doing the same because they too are tired of sending their resources and seeing those resources siphoned and mismanaged. But there's hope, you know, when you've worked on the continent as I have, and Eric has, you know, those of us who now have some white hair, you know, you remember there was Mobutu. I remember, Eric, and let me, you know, share a little secret here, you know, Eric trying to facilitate a phone call between Mobutu and President Jimmy Carter, looking for people who could help the two of them have a conversation because late President Carter spoke English and Mobutu spoke French. And here was President Carter, former president, now late president of the United States, pleading with Mobutu and saying, Marshal, your people are in the streets. They want freedom. They want democracy. Let them have it. And Mobutu says, they have to ask kindly. They have to ask gently. Why are they being so forceful? As if the country belonged to him. No, our country doesn't belong to these people. They own a share of the country just as the rest of us. We were born there, our parents were born there. And we have to remind them, we have to help our people come out of this state of acquiescence. No, these people should not do that to us. They have no right to do that to us. They're not more intelligent than we are, and they have done more disservice to that country than many Cameroonians in the diaspora. And so when you've seen the Mobutu's fall, when you've seen the emperor, Bukasa, who crowned himself with diamonds, fall, when you've seen apartheid at the time when South Africa, under the apartheid regime, had material that could allow them produce nuclear weapons, the apartheid regime collapsed. The Soviet Union collapsed. The Berlin Wall, a physical division within Germany, came down. Not even because anybody bombed it, but because ordinary citizens were just tired. And they went to the wall and they started dismantling it brick by brick. And that's how it collapsed. And so we should share these stories with our people and remind them that that country belongs to all of us, which brings me to where I started. A new Cameroon, a new nation state is indispensable. It is possible, it is necessary, it is indispensable. I hope that we can collectively continue to work in that direction. We can keep our eyes and ears open and wait or look out for that aggregation moment when we can build synergies that transform windows of opportunities into doors wide open, and that we can bring our fellow citizens into that conversation that Project C is helping us so beautifully to lay the foundation stage and the pillars that would make us work together to build a better and more prosperous nation for ourselves and future generations. I really want to thank each and everyone for participating in today's conversation. And once again, really thank Eric for your leadership, and Array and Leopold for your hard work, and everybody that's supporting Project C, for all of our brothers and sisters that have made their various platforms available for us to have this conversation. And I hope that the train would continue so that when the moment comes, we would, like the wise virgins in the Bible, be ready to take advantage of it. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Fomunyu, for being with us, for sharing with us so passionately, bringing your experience to the table. And we're all living here energized and hoping that we can do this. We can do this as a people. I know too often, I struggle and fight with this, where we have to think about what the future will look like and work towards it. We have the tendency to face the status quo, but the status quo is yesterday. The status quo is today. How do we build for tomorrow? And that's where we're trying to throw our energies, because that tomorrow will come before we know it. And that's why we launched this campaign, the Once and For All campaign. Let's resolve this Cameroon issue once and for all. Again, thank you for being here. Thank you to everyone that joined us. Eric, if you have any closing remarks, that would be, we would appreciate this. But I think
maybe before Eric talks, the train will continue and the train is on the move. Donc le train
en français pour nos compatriotes.
Le train va continuer. Le train est en marche. Il ne s'est même pas encore arrêté à une gare. Il s'arrêtera à une gare lorsqu'il y aura le changement. Et ceux qui, pour rassurer les autres, ceux qui seront en charge, les nouveaux qui seront en charge du pays, Project C leur dira, voici ce que les Camerounais demandent. Voilà.
Okay. En tout cas, merci Léopold Haré, merci. Je suis époustouflé en écoutant Chris. Vraiment, c'est extraordinaire. Et je me rends compte qu'aujourd'hui, sur toutes les plateformes, les différentes plateformes, il y avait énormément de gens. Les nombres ont augmenté à travers les différentes plateformes. Je ne sais pas si c'est parce qu'ils savaient que c'est le docteur Fomunio qui venait, mais merci beaucoup, Chris. I'm just so overwhelmed. I decided I wasn't going to say a thing because I don't want to even water down what you've said. So I'm hoping that what left your lips went to the ears of God and to the ears of Cameroonians everywhere. Thank you so much. I was simply going to thank a lot of people, but they know themselves. We're all a part of this. And I think we just have to continue and join the battle and under Harry's leadership. And Paul, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we will be back next Saturday. But before we go, we have one last message to share, which would help people understand what this campaign is and why we're doing it. So please.
No. Pendant des décennies, les Camerounais ont regardé l'espoir leur glisser entre les doigts. Des décisions concernant notre avenir prises à huis clos. Nos voix noyées par le pouvoir et la politique. Encore et encore, on nous a dit qui nous sommes et ce que nous devons accepter. Le destin du Cameroun a été façonné par d'autres. Les Camerounais se réveillent et exigent le changement. Quel genre de pays voulons-nous? Qu'est-ce qui fait de nous des Camerounais? L'âme du Cameroun est façonnée, non par ce qui nous divise, mais par ce qui nous unit. Et quel genre de pays voulons-nous? Qu'est-ce qui fait de nous des Camerounais? Imaginez un mouvement, non pas de politiciens, mais du peuple. Imaginez chaque coin de ce pays, chaque hameau, village, ville, cité, chaque région, se levant ensemble avec un seul objectif, pas pour une élection, pas pour le pouvoir, mais pour une seule nation, une fois pour toutes. Imaginez mettre le pays au-dessus de soi, l'amour au-dessus de la haine. Le Cameroun, non la tribu, la langue, ni la région. L'âme du Cameroun est façonnée, non par ce qui nous divise, mais par ce qui nous unit. Imaginez un mouvement, non pas de politiciens, mais du peuple. Ce n'est pas un rêve, c'est le projet C. Imaginez les vendeurs de rue, les conducteurs de moto-taxi, les syndicats, les chefs traditionnels, les professionnels et la diaspora. Travaillant ensemble partout pour quelque chose de plus grand que chacun de nous. Pour la première fois, nous, le peuple, nous réunirons pour répondre aux questions les plus difficiles, les plus importantes. Comment enfin mettre au repos les fantômes du passé et créer un avenir où chaque citoyen a sa place. Ouais. Au cours des 4 prochains mois, nous écouterons, nous débattrons, nous rédigerons une nouvelle constitution. Une constitution détermination à bâtir un Cameroun de dignité, de paix et de prospérité. C'est un mouvement et du peuple pour le peuple. Plus de décisions prises pour nous, sans nous. Plus d'attente pour avoir la permission d'espérer. Un nouveau Cameroun est possible. Non déterminé par notre passé colonial, mais par notre avenir commun. Rejoignez le mouvement pour un nouveau Cameroun. C'est le projet C, c'est un mouvement né du peuple pour le peuple. Un nouveau Cameroun est possible. Rejoignez le mouvement pour un nouveau Cameroun.
Well, that was the message. That's what we hope to do together. Come together and make sure that a new Cameroon is possible. Dr. Chris Fomenyon said it. It's indispensable. It's inevitable. We have to work together to make it happen. Thank you all. We will be here next week again for another thrilling experience, but one that mobilizes us, and we'll keep sharing with you updates on the surveys as we collect them. Thank you. Have a good weekend. Bye, everybody.